Yeah, I'll just sit here updating my NBA lineups, waiting for. I don't even know where he went. Just let me know when we started.
Go ahead, dude. Told you. Hit it.
Just let me know. Did we start, Jordan?
Are we live?
Oh, Jordan didn't say anything to me.
Of course, he never does. He never does. Hey, good evening. Welcome. It's the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown live before lock. Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns. I said it this morning. I'll say it again. This is a great game. I don't care what anybody says. It's cold. You got shitty weather. You got one pretty bad team, another pretty complete team, but a tight spread because it's an AFC North battle in Cleveland. Jameis Winston chucking it for almost 400 yards and still getting the piss beat out of him last week. I mean, what isn't there to like, Greg Ehrenberg?
The weather is pretty shitty. That's something else that's going to play a little bit of a factor. And I don't know about you, but it's been raining all day here. I don't think it's rained in the Northeast, I feel like, in 2 months. I can't remember the last time it rained.
No, it's been a real actual issue. Yeah, we had like fire warnings or fire weather or fire conditions, whatever they call it. It was too dry. So yeah, it was cold here today. It was raining here today, but we got football, and that's all that matters. And I'm excited to talk about it. How you feeling?
Doing pretty good. Just got my NBA lineups updated, which should be an ongoing thing here. It was a fun slate that had only 4 games, but a lot of news that's going to be breaking throughout the night. And we got a bunch of it that just came in right before the show. Still waiting on guys like a Wendell Carter Jr. and Rui Hachimura. But other than that, my NBA lineup's good, ready to go. Uploaded it in the late swap tool. And now I'm looking over the NFL lineups that I've got built for tonight's game and trying to figure out. The reason I brought up the weather is because I'm trying to figure out if I want to let that dictate what I'm doing with any of my lineups here, because I do think that there is some risk of, say, like the kickers not being utilized as much if the conditions are tough for kicking.
It's always a concern. I don't know I don't know how worried I am about it though. Like, I don't think I'm going to let it dictate a ton here. The total has come down 36.5, but nothing insane. I mean, really, let me ask you this. If there wasn't weather in this game, if there wasn't weather here in this Cleveland and Pittsburgh game, what do you think the total would be? 39.5?
Well, what did it open at?
I'll tell you. It's always tough to say because they always give you these like look ahead lines, which, they can serve some purpose, but not great. 43.5. I'm telling you right now, there's just no way the weather brought it down 7 points. The weather did not bring this game down a touchdown.
Say maybe 40.5 would have been the total.
That seems about right to me. That seems reasonable. Yeah. I don't know. You think it brought it down a touchdown? I'd say maybe if it was like those crazy lake effect Buffalo games with the snow, sure. But that seems a little bit extreme. Also, just throwing this out there, looking at the weather right now, let's see how bad it's actually going to be.
It's going to be cold, which one thing I have not done my own research, but I've read other people's research on what it does for trends of games. And cold weather, teams are a little bit more apt to run the football than throw the football in the cold weather. So that is one thing on my mind, is that we probably should be favoring the running games a little bit more than the passing games, but that was going to kind of be the case for this game anyway.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. But also, I mean, these are teams that play in cold weather. Like, unless you want to say Winston doesn't. Like, Winston, if you wanted to make that argument, fine. New Orleans, Tampa Bay,
Florida State.
Okay. All right. Russ has played some pretty cold games, though. Yeah, Seattle's a nasty place. So, whatever. Either way. Let's talk about it. Happy to have you guys with us. If you don't mind, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It's free and it helps us feed the algorithm. Otherwise, we wouldn't ask you. It goes a very long way. And for that, we are appreciative for all of you helping us out every time we do this show. So hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. And Greg, I figured before we dive into this game in earnest, I would mention to everybody out there right now that we've got an exclusive promo for anybody that wanted to dive into our portfolio EV tool. Um, the promo code is exclusive. This is exclusive to you, but the promo code is also exclusive. 30% off our portfolio EV tools. If you're looking to, look, you're here because you want to make money. Even if you're not betting right now, but you want other ways to make, I've honestly been phrasing it like this. It's a secondary stream of income at this point, Greg. Like
Yeah.
with the way that the tools have performed, with the way that these tools have performed for us throughout the start of the basketball season last year too, and the hockey season, that is exactly what it is. Like I don't ever use the phrase guaranteed, but thus far it has been week over week profits rolling in, continuing to dump your bankroll back into your bets. And it's, I mean, this should be $1,000 a month, quite frankly, but it's nowhere close to that. We're giving you 30% off. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat. Exclusive is the promo code for 30% off. I don't know. I'm just very excited about what we've got going on and how our devs set this up to make us the best market-based site out there when it comes to sports betting.
Yeah. And then also for people with all different kinds of bankrolls, especially because we're not as expensive as some of our competitors are for the sports betting side. So for instance, I've been doing the bankroll challenge that I'm not even a month into it, and I've turned $100 into nearly $400 at this point. So even if you're somebody who is paying the 30% off, so you'd be paying $70 for a monthly subscription, if you started with just the $100, you'd still be well clearing the cost of the tools and then making some more on top of it if you were just doing some of the bets like in the bankroll challenge I've been doing. And those are just a fraction of the bets there. There's more NBA bets. I'm only posting a small percentage of those, but then there's also NHL that goes on every day. So there's a ton of bets there.
Yeah, my NHL results are preposterous for someone who doesn't watch the NFL or NHL. So yeah, would love to see you guys over there. I promise if you figure out how to use this tool, watch our tutorials, hit me or Greg up, hit us up in Discord, hit us up on DMs. We will get you right and you'll be making money with Portfolio EV. You're here to make money. Why not do it in a way that's far less volatile than DFS? I can tell you that much. You beat the variance with volume betting on small edges. That's the way we do it, and that's the way we win. Link down there, promo code exclusive at checkout. EXCLUSIVE. You know how to spell it. All right, let's go. So right now at captain, the two guys I'm getting the most of, David Njoku, which is a very interesting one that I'm getting as much David Njoku as I am, and Najee Harris. So Njoku and Harris, I boosted Pickens a little bit just to get a tad more because the guy is so good. And when he does have those big games, like when Pickens goes on to have those insane games, you need him. So I at least want to be around the field there. And then some Wilson, Tillman, and those guys. But right now, Njoku and Harris are the two guys getting the most of it, captain. I get it. And with Njoku, is it an exciting play? No, but he opens things up. And if you look at the target share since Jameis Winston took over for Cleveland, essentially, Njoku's a little bit behind those guys, but it's Njoku, it's Tillman, it's Moore, and it's Judy, and there's simply nobody else getting looks.
One thing I really like, because these are also pretty similar exposures to what I got this morning when I ran The Sims and was recording some content. Things haven't massively changed from earlier in the day. Oftentimes it does as players get ruled out and whatnot, but that hasn't been the case over the course of today. Is with Najee Harris, two of the more popular players in the captain spot are George Pickens and Russell Wilson, two guys that I'm not getting very much exposure to in the captain spot when running everything through The Sims. And you start to look at like, okay, what's the most logical way that Russell Wilson and George Pickens fail? It's Najee Harris scores the touchdowns. So there's clear leverage in getting Najee Harris and being overweight to the Pittsburgh running backs as opposed to playing the passing game. And then also we've got some of the data that we're aware of that in colder weather games, teams tend to be a little bit more run happy. So I really do like that we're getting to Najee Harris in the captain spot, even if I think Najee Harris is no good. And I don't typically like playing him for main slate DFS where you have to try to figure out who's going to get the workload between him and Jaylen Warren. For one game slates where some of these leverage points really matter more, I really do like the logic of Najee Harris in the multiplier.
Of course. Yeah, he's he's at the very least going to get a good workload, and you can't really ask for more than that on a slate like this. I don't know if I can say the same for Nick Chubb right now, because Nick Chubb has not been very involved in the passing game. Look, I love this guy. I've said a million times. I think him and Derrick Henry, when healthy, were the two best pure running backs, pure rushers in football, but he's not the same yet. And it's not like he had a tough matchup last week against the Saints either. You also saw Jerome Ford in another game removed from that hamstring injury get more involvement as well. Just at the running back positions in general, Greg, I'm getting a lot more Harris and Warren than I am Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford. Is that something you would want to change, or would you be okay keeping that? Because Chubb he just hasn't looked that good.
He has not at all. And it was something that you and I got asked about multiple times last week. We got asked about it on Wednesday when we were doing the lineup building show. We got asked about him on Friday when we were doing the sim show. Yep. Everyone wanted to play Nick Chubb, which I get it. He was in a really good matchup against the Saints. There's a lot of name value. And for the longest time, he was one of the best fantasy running backs in the entire league. And he just hasn't looked the same so far this year. And it makes sense if you just think about it logically. He turns 29 years old in a few weeks. That is massive. That is ancient for a running back. Then on top of it, he's had two devastating knee injuries. Last year's being one of the worst knee injuries we've ever seen from a running back. Just tore all his shit up. Everything got fucked up. He turned his leg inside out when he got hit. It bent in the wrong direction. And then he comes back and people are like, all right, we got the old Nick Chubb. It just seems so unrealistic to me. Kind of similar to what we talked about with Aaron Rodgers at the start of the year this year, Laffy, where there's a chance that he could bounce back and be good. It's just such a slim outcome when you consider the age at the position, the injury history, and all these other factors. It's not the most likely scenario. And you've got this guy who's never in his entire career averaged less than 5 yards per carry, is averaging 3.1 yards per carry this year. I think the most likely scenario here is that he's washed.
Yeah, or at the very least, he just needs more time, which I don't think is a crazy thing to assume. Not everybody can come back like Adrian Peterson, though, and I think we know that. A lot of these guys don't. You know, honestly, like even Dalvin Cook, I remember coming back from a couple of those injuries, just was never exactly the same as you expected him to be. It's tough, man. It's really tough to come back as a running back. And Nick Chubb isn't a spring chicken anymore. He's 29 years old, which in running back years is like 200. So, yeah, I just think he's relatively tough to get to today. He is. And same with Jerome Ford. I bet the over on his rushing prop earlier in the morning. It's since come up a bit because it was at 14. But that doesn't make him a good DFS play, really. In the event that they fall behind, maybe that changes because he basically saw 2 times as many snaps as Nick Chubb last week. So there's that. But they were also playing from behind. It's a 3-point spread. They're at home. It's bad weather. It's a super low total sitting at 36.5. The likelihood that this game just gets super out of hand early, anything can happen, but it seems like a pretty low likelihood that that happens. Which means that Ford, you'd be relying on maybe like 2 targets and 5 rushing attempts.
Yeah. And then just one other point on Chubb that I know that you had brought up, but because I'm looking at the numbers now is really relevant. He's got 2 receptions in the 4 games he's played in so far this year. And he was never a guy in the past either who was super. And when he was at the peak of his powers, he wasn't somebody who was getting massive workloads in the passing game. So Nick Chubb, because it's a 1-game showdown slate, he's not unplayable for a 1-game slate, but I'm not going to like him as much as the field, and I don't like him as a multiplier option either.
Yeah.
And he's expensive.
Matt Butler had mentioned to me on Twitter that it looks like the line barely moved in the past 24 hours. Right, exactly. So, you know, obviously though, Matt and everyone listening, it's possible that, you know, this weather, you know, a couple days ago was projected to be where it was, or people saw 43.5 between these 2 teams in an AFC North game and just said, I'm good. But anyway, there is one guy I want to talk about. We bounce around a little bit here and we'll get to all the important stuff as well. Darnell Washington. Matt and I, I won't, if you watch the strategy show today, Matt and I went pretty deep into Darnell Washington. This guy's actually pretty good. I'm giving him a slight boost to get up to around, like, right now, 13%. No captain, 13% at flex. The reason for this is that Pat Freiermuth, despite running more routes, has not been great. Wilson isn't looking his way all that often. You have a guy in Washington who over the last 4 games is running around 13 routes per game, but he's been targeted on over 26% of routes run. And again, he's very cheap. So when you look at this, put it in context. He's very cheap, but he's also a freak, and they're going to use him a lot to block. So he will be on the field. He might be the best blocking tight end in all of football. Guy is a specimen. He has outsnapped Freiermuth now in 2 straight games. Well, 1 game, and then both of them had 58% of snaps last week. There might just be a game where this guy ends up seeing like 3 or 4 targets and ends up giving you a solid performance at 2,400. So a guy I'd like to get a little bit more of in the field tonight, Darnell Washington, tight end for Pittsburgh. I really don't hate that, because if I were to ask you, Greg, where's the value coming from on this slate? You could point me towards a Van Jefferson or a Calvin Austin. You could try to point me towards someone in Cleveland, but Winston's literally only throwing to 4 guys in the passing game. There isn't that much out there. So I don't think getting a little bit different with a 4% on Darnell Washington is all that crazy.
No, not at all. And I can't remember, there was one show that I'd filled in for you, and I was doing it with Matt, and I'm pretty sure that
it would have been, you know what it was? It was Halloween, because I was out with the girls.
Definitely that could have been the one.
The only one I've missed.
If that was one where Pittsburgh was playing, I remember just asking Matt about contrarian plays, and he told me Darnell Washington was his favorite player in the NFL. And my initial thought is, who the hell his favorite player is Darnell Washington? It's the most obscure. It's the most obscure player to be somebody's favorite guy. But Matt is insistent that Darnell Washington is a potential star who's being misused in the National Football League. So based on that, right, and Matt knowing the ins and outs of a ton of players that you and I have either barely heard of or we're not super familiar with, I'll take Matt's word for it. He is somebody who, when he has a strong opinion like that, I'll definitely value that.
Just don't ask chat to take his word for it on Jamar Chase. Aside from that, yes, definitely. But yeah, he's cheap. We can talk about some value here. I think this is kind of the most important aspect of this. And by the way, I just reran the Sims. Still David and Joku and Harris up top, a little bit more Pickens now. And then I'm in like the 6 to 8% range with Judy, Tillman, Jameis, and those guys. Not a lot of Russ at captain, though.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have Russ. I'm about to rerun everything too with some updated stuff here to see what changes for me. But yeah, I was getting to, I think I had 1 or 2% Russ in my top 150 lineups before.
1 or 2%, you said?
Yeah, I think that was the number. I'm rerunning it right now, though.
Yeah, I simply don't have a ton of him at all, and I'm okay with it. I want to know your thoughts on, and I'll get into mine as well, but your thoughts on Jaylen Warren, because I'm getting a lot of Najee, but also a lot of Warren. He is used. They will look to him in the passing game, and the good thing about the weather in a spot like this is it's not that concerning for pass catching running backs who are catching most of their passes behind the line of scrimmage. So I don't really worry too much there. What are you doing with Warren?
Yeah, it's kind of been a lost season for Jaylen Warren, where towards the tail end of last year, it was starting to look like at times he was going to take over as the lead back for the Steelers ahead of Najee Harris. Then he was going to be the guy moving forward into the future. And he just hasn't been healthy this year. He had the hamstring injury to open up the season, which caused him to miss time. And then he came back, he gets re-injured. And I think that's also made them really hesitant to give him a bigger workload. But we're now more than halfway through the season, and I assume he's probably starting to get a little bit healthier. And then also when you consider that we don't have optimal weather conditions here, I do think the most likely way that we see both teams go about their passing games is just shorter depth of target on a lot of their passing plays. And that's where guys like David Njoku is going to make sense for the Browns. But that's also where Jaylen Warren could come into play for the Steelers. And relative to his price point, because we got Jaylen Warren, not all that expensive, Jaylen Warren is $6,200 in the flex over on DraftKings. He's not all that expensive on FanDuel either. I do prefer him on DraftKings because the main utilization for him is going to be some of those PPR points. I think that's where his fantasy points are most likely going to be coming from. At $6,200, it is not hard to envision a scenario where him and Najee Harris are both solid relative to their price points.
So you're perfectly fine having both of them in the same lineup is what I'm getting at.
Absolutely. And I also think it's a build that the field is not going to want to play. So it'll be a little bit more of a unique combination.
I have plenty of it. I have no concerns. It's much more appealing than a Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford lineup. I can tell you that. And then you get into the pass catchers for Pittsburgh. So we can lump Russell Wilson into this equation too. George Pickens. He's a freak. He's fantastic. If there's anybody to go out in any type of weather and have an incredible game, it's George Pickens. And, you know, Russell Wilson is going to look his way deep at least a couple times a game. Always does. He was like a couple yards shy of a touchdown the other day. Leads the league in red zone, or leads the team in red zone and end zone targets since Russell Wilson took over. All of those things look pretty good. And then if you were to just look at like, all right, Russell Wilson, does he still have the deep ball? You know what? The answer is yes. He's attempted 11 deep balls. Actually, hold on. Let me pull up. Was it week 10? Yeah. He's attempted, 19 deep attempts in the 4 games that he has started this year. You look at those deep attempts when it comes to Pittsburgh. And again, you could talk about weather all you want, but you know what? Guess what? We all have the same game we're playing with. 10 of those 19 deep attempts have gone to George Pickens. And I'll do you one better, Greg. 6 of 10 receptions, 60% reception rate on those deep balls for 201 yards and 33.5 yards per reception. Those are fantastic. So this is crazy. And take PFF with a grain of salt or don't. Doesn't matter to me. In those 4 games, George Pickens' receiving grade on deep passes, do you want to take a guess? Do you know how great the grading works on PFF?
Yeah. So I assume it's... Boy, it could really go one of 2 ways. This is either going to be a really high or really low number. Based on your tone, I think it's a really high number.
I told you. He has 6 receptions on 10 deep targets, 201 yards and a touchdown. Those are brilliant numbers for
yeah, you never like some of the PFF ratings can be really odd though. So I'm going to assume it's a really high number for George Pickens. I'll say that it's 92.
99.9.
All right. That's
outrageously insane. High. It's also why you go, I don't know about this. But my point is it's been good. So is the weather a concern? Yes. Do I care all that much? No. Right now, I have 40% Pickens at the flex. I have 15% at captain, and I'm okay with that. I know he's expensive, but this guy's so good. On a single game slate, he can just blow things wide open.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. The biggest hang up for me is he's so expensive and there isn't that many great value options. So I do find him a little bit difficult to pay up for. Obviously there's a ceiling there and only it takes one play, not just based on the data that you had shared there, but also based on us. We've all seen George Pickens make some outstanding catches down the field and put up some big fantasy points at times, but you're paying $11,000 for him in the flex spot. It's a lot.
There's no doubt, and you'll get no disagreement from me there, that it is a lot. However, I do think if this ends up being a low scoring game, some of those dirt cheap value plays could give you 6 and that's all you need. So I think you have to base this on how you think this game plays out. You know, like right now we have George Pickens captain ownership in the pool ownership when I ran the Sims at 12.8%. We have him flexed at 35%. I'm right around the field there. Really, I'm right around the field on both of them. I guess what I'm saying to you is I just don't want to get killed by George Pickens today. Like I'm pretty much in lockstep with the field on Pickens.
Yeah, I am in the flex spot, just not as much captain ownership where he's now 14%.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how this one plays out. What do you do with the other pass catchers for Pittsburgh?
Sure. So as far as the other pass catchers from Pittsburgh go, I don't hate Calvin Austin as a punt at 2K. I have him in 26% of lineups right now. He's projected for 13% ownership. He's actually, if you're looking for a punt, a guy who's 2K or cheaper, he's the one that I end up getting the most exposure to for this slate. So that's where he fits in. But I look at the other guys from Pittsburgh, unless we're going to be counting Jaylen Warren as a pass catcher, I just don't have that much of them. The one I have the most of overall, it is George Pickens, but on the whole, I'm a little bit underweight to the field to him. So not that much exposure for me to the Pittsburgh passing game, at least not relative to the run game.
All right. So there was a comment, and this may be quite possibly the most repulsive screen name I've ever seen. Fistula poop.
Oh, I know about him. He's a good
guy. Go look up what that means if you're unfamiliar with it. It's truly repulsive. He said, I'm here. It's snowing. Well, how much is it snowing? Because I looked and it was saying 0.1 inches per hour, which if that's the case, not a whole lot to be super worried about. Not a lot. You let me know. Somebody asked, is that a 200-inch TV behind you? See, that is my masterful ability to create illusion, Greg. Because, look at that. Yeah, but if you watch like his, I place myself perfectly in the middle of these two TVs. It looks like I'm in a movie theater, but I'm not.
So what do you do on Sundays? You go Eagles on one TV and Red Zone on the other?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I do. It makes sense. Anyway, no, Austin's fine. I don't know how much I like Van Jefferson today. Like, I don't even know if I'm getting any Van Jefferson at his price point. I don't think I am.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not.
I'm getting a little bit of Cordero Patterson, which I actually don't think is nuts. Cordell Patterson is, at the very least, this guy can do stuff. They've used him before. Granted, that would have been when like Warren was out, but there are times like he could get 2 rogue rushing attempts, maybe a couple passing attempts. Maybe the weather plays in his favor a little bit. Getting a little bit of Cordero, not a lot. But yeah, when you just look at value, you're going to be hard pressed to find a ton of value that you're in love with here. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. So if you wanted to take a stand on one guy, like a Darnell Washington, like a Calvin Austin, I wouldn't blame you for it. But I also wouldn't blame you, Greg, for taking the entirely different approach and just spreading out exposure to all of those guys and hoping you hit the nuts on one of the many lineups you play.
Yeah, and I did give myself a little bit of a boost to one Darnell Washington. So I've got 18% of them now so that I could be a little bit more in line with our guy, Matt Kajeski, and his favorite football player, which I think that's a reasonable amount to have on Darnell Washington. Get a little bit overweight to him, but I don't want to have 50% of them or anything where my entire night is coming down to Darnell Washington. So I did make that adjustment there. By the way, we also had a few super chats that came in, if you didn't say.
I'll get to them right. Wait, how much Washington do you have?
18%.
Without a boost?
No, with a boost.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, that's crazy.
Yeah. Wanted to back man, get some of his guy.
Why not? Eventually it's going to happen. That game too.
Maybe.
I remember it was, against the Giants. I've been betting him at 10-1 the score every week. So it needs to happen. That game against the Giants, he had a big 29-yard gain. He stepped out of bounds. He almost rumbled to the end zone. So, we'll have our chances. We will. But I think that's a pretty reasonable amount that you're getting to there. Anyway, a couple other things to dig into here after we get to these super chats. But let's hit on these first. First one from... Oh, we had a few. I missed a couple. Hold on. Chat summary. Here's the auto-generated. Viewers are sharing their thoughts on an American football player's injury and fantasy football prospects. Some are... did you get rid of it? I was hoping it would mention fistula poop. Some are discussing the player's injury and recovery while others are talking about the fantasy. Oh, that's not nearly as good. Usually they're pretty fun when you get in the chat.
I'm surprised it's not mentioning people being upset that FanDuel doesn't work. It is not possible to edit your FanDuel lineups right now or to enter them into contests. If you're playing on FanDuel and you actually built out real lineups earlier, you just have an insane edge because the contests are only halfway full. And a lot of those are going to be dead lineups for people who are not able to edit them.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm pretty upset that I can't figure out a way to get in on this right now.
And what they're going to end up doing is they're going to pay out the people who win, but they will they will refund the people who lose.
Yeah. What I'm actually going to do, because I was only going to be playing on DraftKings. I'm going to build out FanDuel lineups right now just to make sure I have those good and ready to go. And then if I'm able to, I'm gonna upload them right before we get to lock, take advantage of some overlay and dead lineups.
I was actually a beneficiary of that once. I won an NBA tournament because I was up top and I had faded the Pelicans game and like I would have gotten crushed, but there was a leak in the roof or something and they had to postpone
Smoothie King
the game.
Center. I remember that well. The Smoothie King Center, the roof was leaking.
So they paid everybody out, but then had to refund everybody who lost because of that game. So yeah, sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. And that's crazy with FanDuel right now. Plus we only have 25 minutes left until lock?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So we're running up against it. All right, let's talk about the super chat. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Goody, what's up, Goody? How you guys feel about 3 running backs in a single lineup, DK 20 max? Like Greg said, Chubb's always going to be in play because it's a showdown slate and it's fantasy. We saw what Eckler did against the Eagles last Thursday, so sure. It's not my favorite build, and I would imagine I don't have a ton of that.
Yeah, so the problem is that I don't have a ton of Nick Chubb right now. So then it's like, who are the 3 running backs I'm getting to?
Right.
I like Najee Harris. I like Jaylen Warren. I've got some lineups with them together, but it's not like that makes up for more than half my lineups or anything like that. If I was to look at my exposure, I'm guessing I probably have something around 20-ish% of my lineups have both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And then when you consider that I have less than 20% of Nick Chubb, I probably only have a few lineups out of all 3 of them.
But Goody's asking because of the weather. I know Goody's a sharp guy. He's asking because of the weather. Would you boost Chubb at all because of the weather? Like, is this something you might consider?
No, not really. I understand where he's coming from, but he's very touchdown dependent. And I know they're going to try to because I know that the Browns organization really likes him. The players all like him. The fans do. So if they get down to the 1 or 2 yard line, they want to get Nick Chubb those touchdowns. But I just think beyond that, he's not all that likely to have the most efficient game.
Brandon Hudson, thank you, man. Hey guys, just wanted to say I've had the best week and a half I've ever had. I've profited every slate I've entered since 2 Sundays ago, and I'm comfortably into 5 figures. These tools are amazing. Hell yeah, dude. We love to see that. Hey, listen, you want to get access to the tools, and congrats, Brandon, man. That's the news we love seeing, especially when people, they take a shot on the tools. They don't know. A lot of people have been burned by other sites. There's plenty of janky DFS sites out there that sell you a dream, so I get it. But there's nothing better than seeing people take the chance, take the dive, take the leap, so to speak, and then have great results instantly. It's not always going to be instantly. Sometimes you have to stick with it because it's DFS, but to see that is fantastic. And guys, as always, if you wanted to get involved, there's a link down there, Stokastic Plus NFL. Sign up for any subscription week or month you want. Or if you just wanted to get all of them for free, you did not mishear me. If you wanted to get the core package for the entirety of the month for free, just click the first link, the one that says join any sportsbook, get Sims free. You're getting the core package. It's $100 value, and you're getting it for free when you sign up with any of our sportsbook partners. Just click that link and then click claim offer. Jordan will show you on the screen on any of those books. And if you're in non-legal betting sites, same thing applies for pick'em sites like Underdog, Prize Picks, Better, you name it. Sign up, deposit after it takes a minute to sign up. Deposit, it's usually like $10 minimum. Bet, and after that first bet settles, right? email us at support@stokastic.com. Simply just follow those 4 steps up there with a screenshot of your first settled bet and of your welcome email. Here's what I would do. Even if you bookmark it until after the show, like click that link and leave it up on your phone or your browser, bet the game live tonight, because the moment that settles, you hit us up, we get you in. That means you have all of Sunday's slate, every slate, because our Sims tools cover every single slate. And you're just going to build better, more profitable lineups. They cover every slate, including all of this obscure showdowns. Sunday night, Monday night, Thanksgiving. Then you've got all of the other slates. And if you sign up on multiple books, let's say you wanted BetMGM, that's 200 in bonus bets on a $10 deposit. Bet365, 150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, 200 in bonus bets. Get all those bonus bets, but you also get a free month of core for every single month for every single book that you sign up. No limitations. You could sign up for everyone on there and get 11 months free of core package, and you can select any sport that you want. Just let us know in the email which one it is. So if you ever wanted to get in, it's the time to do so. Best promo we've ever done. I don't know how long it lasts, but it's still there now. So check it out. Link in the description and in chat. Of course, if you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 years or older to gamble. All right. Can we dig into David Njoku a little bit here? Because he does project really well for us here in the captain spot. Do you have any thoughts as to why? Is it ownership? Is it projection? Is it both? Is it just the leverage we're getting there at captain and it opens things up elsewhere?
Yeah, so I think part of the reason is his props are pretty solid looking for this slate relative to his price tag. And I think that's because of an expectation that teams aren't going to be able to throw the ball downfield as much. I'm just guessing. I don't know exactly why books have set the lines exactly where they have, but it stands to reason that if teams are not going to be expected to throw the ball downfield as much, well, then you have to look for shorter depth of targets. And that's where guys like Jaylen Warren, David Njoku are going to be coming into play. So I think that's a part of it. But then also, as far as his ownership, he's not projected for that much ownership. Plus, he's relatively cheap on a slate that doesn't have very appealing value. So I think all of those things put together, you've got him projecting well relative to his price tag, a price tag that's also pretty cheap, honestly, where it's really hard to find value. And then also that he's only pulling a few percentage of ownership in that captain spot. It overall adds to him being somebody who the Sims are getting us way overweight to as a multiplier option.
I think now, would you say the same thing with Najee? It's just, game script and everything and his price point?
Yeah, I mean, him being priced around 9K. Same with Jaylen Warren at $6,200. And then if you look on the FanDuel side of things, Najee Harris is $12,000. Jameis Winston's $15,000. Russell Wilson's $15,500. You've also got George Pickens is $13,500. So it's just these price points are much more accessible on guys like Najee Harris and David Njoku than they are on the QBs or on somebody like George Pickens, who's really expensive.
All right, so I'm finalizing some lineups here. And the one thing that I am getting to a lot of, and I'm not changing this, is a lot of Steelers defense. Mm-hmm. At this rate, if you're looking at a total this low, who knows? Maybe this game ends up having 50 points, Greg. I'll never forget the one game because I got 8 points of closing line value on the under for the Patriots and Steelers last year. And they ended up going over the game total in the first half, right? It was a horrible weather game, 2 terrible quarterbacks, and it just so happened to turn into some electric shootout. So, it can happen, but that's not the likely outcome here. Steelers defense, and you know what? Even Browns defense in a spot like this in a pretty crappy weather game, both of them to me look more than okay.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I want to add too, just because I finalized up my FanDuel lineups here, is that Nick Chubb does look a lot better on FanDuel than DraftKings, which makes sense when you consider there's no PPR, no full point PPR, and then also with it being a little bit more touchdown scoring dependent. So I do like Nick Chubb on FanDuel. It's funny because Nick Chubb hardly shows up for me on DraftKings. He was in something like 10% of my lineups. But then I look at my FanDuel lineups where he shows up in nearly half of them.
You're back on, is FanDuel back up then?
I don't know. I've got the lineups built, so I'm ready to enter them if it's a possibility. But last time I tried to enter them, it failed.
Okay. How about kickers? Are you worried about the weather here?
Yes. It's not enough for me to say not play Chris Boswell because he still projects fairly well for us, but I give him a little bit of a negative ROI boost. At the very least, relative to the way we normally play Showdown, I'm not playing these kickers in 50, 60% of lineups. And that's usually what shows up in our sims. Instead, it's much more modest ownership for me on Chris Boswell. I have him in 30% of lineups at the moment. And Hopkins isn't really showing up in lineups for me, though. So overall, I am underweight to the kickers, but it's more even with the field on Chris Boswell, but pretty heavy underweight to the field on Hopkins. I assume probably the same as well when you ran it, Lofty, that Boswell showed up a lot more than Hopkins.
A lot more, and I'm still getting a decent amount. I'll be honest, I'm not horribly worried about Boswell here. Yes, the weather is a little bit concerning, but what if this just ends up being one of these games where he has like 4 opportunities from inside the 30-yard line? I think that's very live to happen. And if that's, what's that?
It does feel like that happens on every primetime game.
Right. I mean, it happened with Jake Elliott last week. He just so happened, not from inside the 30, but he just so happened to miss everything. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to Chris Boswell here. I think it's perfectly fine. I would say, do I like him less than I typically would? Sure. Let's see what the wind is going to look like here.
Yeah, last I had looked, it's not earlier in the week. Well, a couple days ago, I should say. The wind looked like it was going to be problematic a couple days ago. It still looks like it's going to be a factor, but not as much of a factor as what it looked like. Earlier in the week, if we had to build lineups based on that forecast, it looked like kickers were going to be close to unplayable.
And that's not the case anymore. Yeah, I think it's like 12-mile-per-hour winds. Maybe
not ideal kicking conditions. It adds a little bit of difficulty.
Maybe Fistula Poop can explain to us how the wind is out there. I don't know. But yeah. Okay. One guy we haven't talked about, very important here. Jameis Winston. I have a good amount at flex. I do not have much Jameis Winston at captain today. This is a guy who ended up throwing last game for almost 400 yards. So there's something to be said about that, but still much more difficult matchup. Much more difficult matchup for Jameis today. None of his pass catchers are dirt cheap, at least the guys that you'd want to go to. I still like him. I just don't have nearly as much at captain as I would have at flex. Maybe Jameis just ends up. And also, no problem for those of you guys wondering, because we get this question a lot. No problem with going Steelers defense and Jameis at all.
Especially not on for a 1-game slate. And Jameis Winston. I mean, Jameis Winston is the most high variance DFS quarterback that I can remember over the last 10 plus years that I've been playing DFS, where you got a guy in Jameis Winston who at any given point in time could throw a 70-yard touchdown pass or a pick six. It's on the table every single time he drops back to throw the football. And in some respects, there's even a almost weird correlation between the two, because if he is to throw a pick six today, which I have to think that of all the quarterbacks that are in the league right now, I'm just making this up. I'm going off of me just having watched games. I assume that Jameis Winston's thrown more pick six than anybody in the NFL right now.
Not this season. You mean just in his career?
Just overall for their entire careers of all the available players.
Probably. Who was the guy that threw like 7 one season a few years ago? There's no way he's still in the league. Chat will tell me. This is why I like having chat up. They'll remind me. There was a guy that threw like 6 pick sixes in the first 8 games or something. It was outrageous.
I'm asking StatMuse.
Yeah, if you pull it up. I'm pretty sure it was like record-breaking territory. Eat my shorts with a super chat. Thanks, dude. Says, I can't believe you guys haven't talked about the best player on the slate. Wow, I'm top spot tonight. Who are you referring to? I feel like we've talked about most people, but I'm happy to listen.
Yeah, I'm also wondering who.
It wasn't Nathan Peterman. Nathan Peterman threw all of that in one game.
In one half.
What? One half.
That game, if I'm not mistaken, he threw 6 interceptions in a half.
Yep. No,
and then the Bills, because they're cowards, benched him before he could make history. It's like taking out a pitcher when they have a no-hitter going in the 8th inning. You don't do that.
No,
You let him go. You let him go for history.
Uh,
He must mean Jerry Jeudy.
No, real quick. It was Matt Schaub. He threw a pick. He set an NFL record. Someone in chat, actually, shout out to Porzingis. Nice work, brother. Threw a pick 6 in 4 consecutive games. That's a lot.
The only thing that's held Winston back from that kind of record is that teams don't play him enough.
Mm-hmm.
If he had been playing consistently over the last few years, he could have matched that. I believe in him.
Yep. Definitely. Was he talking about Jeudy? Is that who he said?
I'm assuming, because I'm just thinking about the players we haven't talked about yet, and we haven't really talked about the Browns pass catchers. We've talked about Njoku. He's the one I get the most exposure to, but we haven't talked about Jerry Jeudy or Cedric Tillman. So I assume it has to be one of those two guys. And just because Jerry Judy's the one who had the biggest game last week, I'm going to pare it down and say that he's probably referencing Jerry Jeudy.
Do you know why I haven't talked extensively about these guys? Because it might just be like the cheaper ones or the better ones. And here's what I mean. Jerry Judy's had one really solid game and 2 games with a lot of opportunities, right? But also, if you look at the target shares for these players, okay, since Jameis took over, dude, they're basically the same person. That's the same player. I mentioned it on the strategy show this morning. 23% target share for Jeudy, 30 targets. 22% for Elijah Moore. That's 1% lower. 29 targets, 1 fewer target, 1 less target. Tillman, 21%, 28 targets. They're all separated by 2 targets over those games that Winston played. So I look at Jeudy and I say he's coming off the good game. But are we immediately crowning Jerry Jeudy off one good game, or can we go back and look at the big Cedric Tillman game 1 or 2 weeks before that? They're all very similar. The difference is that Judy's more expensive. For what it's worth, I have a decent amount of Jeudy, but I have a lot of Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman too because they're cheaper. I don't think there's a huge difference. The biggest difference is that Elijah Moore is not on the field as much, but targets per route run is higher than both Jeudy and Tillman. So all of them, Greg, look very, very similar. The difference is that Jeudy had an 89-yard touchdown reception, so that's what everybody's remembering.
Yeah, I was going to say the biggest difference is that Jerry Jeudy's had the best game recently, and we've seen this time and time again this NFL season. It means he's going to come in higher owned than his ownership projection.
Definitely. Should he? I don't know. I'm not convinced he should. Do you think
there's nothing wrong with him. I'm just going to end up being underweight to the field on him because I assume the field is going to be really heavy on him based on what he did last game.
Right. That's how I see it as well. I have no issues there whatsoever. Perfectly fine getting to him. However, I don't think Tillman looks any worse.
No, we've got nearly... I know you had said the projection is really similar. What's the exact difference? Like 1/10 of a fantasy point?
Oh, I didn't even look at projections. I was giving you their target shares on the season, but I can do that for you right now. Hold on.
Yeah, but even the projection, because I see Jordan has projections up right now. I'm fairly sure we have almost the exact same projection on them.
We probably do. All right, hold on. So we have a projection on Jerry Jeudy at 10.28, 10.03 on Tillman, and 8.54 on Moore. So he's 11.33 on David Njoku.
Yeah. So, but at least Jeudy and Tillman are very, very close together.
And they should be, right? I don't really think I don't see much to differentiate there, honestly. I really don't. So we'll see. Any other value that we haven't talked about yet?
See, is there somebody that I am not really? Because I don't have, there aren't that many punts that I really love for this slate, Lofty. Like if I have to roster one of them, it's going to be Calvin Austin, who shows up most frequently. I did boost Darnell Washington. Shout out Matt Gajewski. But unless there's somebody else I'm missing, are there any sub 1K guys you're getting a bunch of, or other players who are really cheap? Because I just don't have other guys that show up meaningfully.
No, I mean the one that we talked about, Darnell Washington and Calvin Austin, those guys are viable. I don't see the value for Cleveland, unfortunately. I don't see a ton of value on Cleveland. And maybe you do. Maybe you guys can tell me where it's coming from. I'm happy to listen, although I'd be hard pressed to figure that out with only a few minutes before lock. But I don't think it's going to be there. We playing Jamari Thrash. Like, is the guy even active? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking through my lineups again right now and nothing. By the way, is FanDuel up?
I don't know. I'm not playing on FanDuel tonight.
I'm more asking chat right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. By the way, Donta Foreman, as expected, is a coach's decision inactive. Scotty Miller is actually on Pittsburgh. He's out as well. Nothing else. Alex Highsmith and some of these guys that we expected to be out. Jedrick Wills is out. But aside from that, there aren't any significant. That's why I didn't mention them earlier. There's no significant inactives here. Nothing really changed from this morning till now. I think you're just basically looking at, and James said Ford. Yeah. Again, Ford's fine, but you're also overpaying for him. You're hoping for you're hoping for a spot where they have to throw. James asked, Silver Bullet or Ultras, Laffy? I think Michelob Ultras get a bad name, like a dad beer, you know, but they're actually not. Jordan's shaking his head. Are you in agreement with me that they're actually not bad? Right, they're not bad. I'm a Coors Light guy. I'm drinking an IPA now. And on the weekends or on the weekdays, if I'm doing like the Thursday show, I have one or two of these and call it quits. But yeah, you can put back some Coors Lights. But Jordan, I'm with you. Unless you're at a Clippers game, you sent that picture. It was like $25 for a Michelob.
Comfortably drink at any LA sporting event, honestly.
No, you have to comfortably drink before you get there.
We did get a question in Discord from Einsteinium. He wanted to know, is Jaylen Warren justified to be pulling this much more ownership than Jerome Ford? To me, the answer is yes. And one thing that, while Nick Chubb hasn't played well this year, I still do think that the Browns are way going to prioritize getting Nick Chubb the football over Jerome Ford. I feel better about the workload and the touches Jaylen Warren is going to get as opposed to the workload and touches that Jerome Ford is going to get.
Yeah. Okay. So FanDuel's still not working for edit, huh?
Well, I just am uploading a final version of lineups and I'll see if it takes.
And by the way, Chump Get the Strap asks, Mike Williams, question mark. You know, Matt had a little bit of interest there this morning. I don't have a ton. I don't know how much they're going to use him. It's a Thursday. He's only been there a little bit. Now they get another opportunity. Basically, like essentially a mini bye week, getting off until next Sunday. I don't know, man. He played 25 snaps last week, 32%. He's had one target, Greg, in 2 games. It just so happened to go for a 30-plus yard touchdown. So maybe people would have some interest there. But I'd probably just rather go to Calvin Austin or Darnell Washington at a discount.
Yeah, Darnell Washington. If salary doesn't matter, Darnell Washington. So I do get a little bit more of Calvin Austin, but part of it's just because he's cheaper.
Eat my shorts with another super chat. Justin Fields smash day. I guess, man.
Justin Fields. All right. Well, if that's the case, you're going to ship something solo if you have the other players right also.
You definitely will ship it solo. You'll also be paying, in all likelihood, you will also be paying the 3rd highest price point on the entire slate for a guy who likely doesn't see the field. So there's also that. Justin Fields is priced extremely high. Why did they do that with Fields? Usually they put him in no man's land in the 6K range.
I guess because they thought there's a chance he could end up starting just because he started other games this year.
I guess that seems crazy though. Pittsburgh's been playing well.
There's so much overlay on FanDuel. I'm trying so hard to get lineups in, but the site isn't working and I'm in denial about it. I'm thinking it's just going to work the next time I click on it every time.
Yeah, it's over. Have they tweeted anything?
I doubt it.
Let's see.
There's a handful of people who just have crazy edges today. No, except I don't have a good way to do that.
Yeah, they haven't tweeted it. I can't say I'm shocked.
They might not even know.
What do you mean?
I think there's a decent chance they don't know.
I don't think that's possible. That they don't know that. You think they've given up on DFS so much that it's just they don't care, and or they didn't even...
Woodpie. Okay, so Woodpie said, or Jafar said that they tweeted.
Oh, they did tweet. Okay, from which account? They have 400 of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I guess the support account.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the night. Remember, Portfolio EV. You want to start making some real money? Like genuinely? Exclusive is the promo code with that link down there. Gets you 30% off the entirety of the month. Or sign up with any of our sports books on that top link and get a free month of Core, Stokastic, Sims. All of our tools right there, $100 value. It's that simple, man. As soon as that bet settles, hit us with those screenshots. Support at Stokastic.com. We got you, baby. Anyway, good luck tonight, guys. Let's enjoy a, as Matt Kajeski would say, greasy football game. And Greg and I will see you back here bright and early in the morning for the Stokastic Tournament Strategy Show at 10 a.m. Peace.